Hello and a warm welcome back to this week's episode of the Face Yoga Expert podcast. And we have one of my friends on this week and one of our regulars on the podcast. We have the lovely Katie Brindle. Katie Brindle is founder of the Hayo'u Method. She's also known as the healer to the stars, and she is an expert in all things traditional Chinese medicine, which is exactly what we're going to be talking about with this episode. We're actually going to be diving in to the 5 elements in traditional Chinese medicine and how you can start to understand more about those to understand more about yourself. And if you don't know already, Katie Brindle and I, and also the lovely Katie Blake, who's also an amazing expert in traditional Chinese medicine, have put together a Gua Sha teacher training course. And we have already trained many people to be facial Gua Sha teachers who are having an amazing career since they have done the training. Many of them combine it with face yoga, many of them combine it with other therapies they do, but it's a fully accredited teacher training course. You do the study in your own time, at your own pace, through video-based learning and through manual-based learning. You learn lots about Gua Sha, how to teach other people to use it on their skin, how to incorporate aspects of traditional Chinese medicine into your teaching as well. You then do a written assignment and practical assignment with the lovely Katie Blake, who guides you through and supports you all the way through. And when you are qualified, you can have an amazing career helping other people using this beautiful crystal tool to help lift and tone their face, plus have lots of wellness and freedom and flexibility and fun and joy and love within your own work as well. So if you'd like more information on that, you just need to go to faceyogaexpert.com and just click on the courses there and you'll see all the teacher training information. So let's get into this week's episode with the lovely Katie Brindle. Katie, a warm welcome back to the Face Yoga Expert podcast. How are you today?
Well, thank you. It's really lovely to be back. Thank you for having me.
I know, and I think it's been 4 times you've been on the podcast. So I think maybe this is number 5. I've lost count because, I mean, we've done so many things together over the years and I always love chatting to you and we've got so much in common and so much we love talking about. And today's no exception. We've got a lot to talk about.
Always have loads to talk about. So it's where do we start and where do we end, really?
I know.
Painting the bridge.
Exactly. So I think, you know what, I think we'll dive straight into it today. So we've just been having a bit of a pre-chat before this podcast and actually said that what we'd love to share with all the listeners and the viewers is a little bit about the 5 elements Chinese medicine, which I find really fascinating. And I was actually having acupuncture last week and talking loads to my acupuncturist about it because she always says I'm very water element and always treats me very much for that. So maybe let's go back to basics with that. Maybe you could talk through what the 5 elements actually are.
So actually what they are is vibrations. So the concept being, if we just step back 1 second, is that according to Chinese medicine, they have the Tao, which most people have heard of, which is everything, the union, the whole, the everything. And then from the Tao, you get yin and yang, which is that very famous symbol I'm sure everybody has seen. And the concept of yin and yang is really the North and the South Pole. So it's like the sort of binary code, and there's a trajectory between the two. They're sort of in relationship to each other. And because they are, and because they're being pulled in directions, as we all know about being pulled in directions, by planetary movements and magnetism and all this other stuff, it's effectively a binary code. And this push-pull that happens between the two, because they're opposing forces, creates 5 frequencies. That's what it is. So those frequencies were defined by the Taoist masters thousands of years ago in relationship to nature, because we live, or we did live in nature. We should be living in nature. And in those days, people did. So we didn't explain things in Latin or in, say, quantum physics terms, because people didn't speak Latin in China and quantum physics didn't exist. So they explained things in relationship to what you saw in the world around, because we'd have been sat there observing. That's what we did. And so those vibrational forces, which have come out of this endless interaction of the binary code, created 5 vibrational forces, which they described as fire, earth, metal, water, and wood. Now, those vibrational forces are also connected to the planets. So they have connections to the planetary system in the atmosphere above us, but also they connect to our organs. And this is where it all starts to get really interesting, because the concept is that, well, it's not the concept. The truth is we have come out of nature. I mean, that has now been confirmed by Western science as well over the centuries. So we've come out of nature, and our organs relate to these elements, to the planets, and they resonate to them. So what then happens when you have someone say you're watery? Although I would actually say you're quite yin fire myself, but I'd have to look at your chart to find out for sure. But when you see a characteristic in somebody, oh, you're very watery, or I'm very earthy. Okay, what happens is, according to when you were born, you take your first breath and you breathe in the energy which is out there right now. So right now I'm recording this with you in May, and we're having a nice little moment of summertime. Okay, now that's very different middle of the day in early summer to perhaps middle of the night in November. The energy frequencies are different. We feel that, we have different feelings in the winter. We dress differently. We wear different makeup. We, different emotions. And so they imprint their characteristics on the people according to the energy frequency that you first drew breath. It's like a kind of hand of cards. It's like when you're about to play 10-card rummy, you pick up your hand and there's your hand. And according to this, there's no such thing as a bad hand. It's just how you play it. And it's all about observation and awareness to understand how to then balance your body and deal with this hand and how you navigate the hand, which ultimately develops the body, develops the spirit. And that's the concept that goes behind it. And if you don't, this is the last little bit, that will be the origin of an imbalance. And that imbalance, ultimately, if it gets a foothold in the body, creates a symptom, which ultimately, eventually, if untreated, will eventually lead to ill health.
Yeah, exactly. It's so fascinating. And I know you've got a whole fact sheet on this, which we're going to put in all the show notes so people can understand a lot more about it. But if anyone listening or watching is thinking, okay, so I'm a little bit intrigued about this, when we then talking about, I'm quite water element, but you say maybe it's yin fire. How can we start to understand more about ourselves? And then when we've got that knowledge, how can we then apply that to our lifestyle to help our overall wellness and energy?
Well, the first thing is what I've done is I've created 5 fact sheets, one per element. So the first thing to do is read them because they're free. And you will notice characteristics about yourself and you'll go, oh, I'm just like that. And that is normally a bit of a telltale sign. It's a bit like saying you're a Libra or a Gemini. It's not everything, because it's not as simple as saying I'm an earth or I'm a water. It's like saying I'm a Libra and I'm a Gemini. But there is then, if you do full astrological charts from, say, Western astrology, you will find that you will then be able to layer a whole variety of different energy frequencies, which give you the uniqueness and the subtlety of what creates the uniqueness of the self, because everyone, like fingerprints, we've all got them, but they're all different. So the first thing to do is, I would say, to just either read the fact sheets or just Google it, because honestly, this sounds really naff, doesn't it? Oh, just Google it. But actually, there is a lot of really good information out there, and it will give you the basics that will start to give you the basic characteristics of each. Now, once you've had a look at the fact sheets and you've resonated to the characteristics that you think, I am very much like that, then you can start to see the kind of characteristics that they give you that could create negativity in the body, because everything is negative and positive. We have both. And it's not about being good or bad or right or wrong. It's just about observation. So, for example, as an earth people are very good at giving, because earth gives. It's what it does. It sort of sits there and just lets you get on with it. And that's actually one of the main problems in society right now, because we've been plundering away going, oh, great, thanks. And earth doesn't do anything about it. Now, if you translate that into a human, often earth overgive. And that's not actually very healthy, as I know. So it's important to understand that if one has that tendency, that one can often go, actually, I'm quite guilty that I do actually overgive. And then what you do is you will look to the controlling element to navigate it. So, for example, if you are an overgiver, which many people are, and society is quite constructed around the fact that, historically, women particularly, because things have changed a lot in the last in our lifetime, but historically, women had to overgive because we were the matriarch, and that was the feminine, earthy responsibility of the matriarch. So what do you do about something like that? You go to the control element, which is 2 previous. So in the case of earth, it's wood, okay? And wood is all about boundaries. Okay, because wood controls earth. So what you do is you are aware of the fact you have that tendency, and then you go to the controlling element to go, so I need to nurture my wood in order to nurture my boundaries. And what I say to my ladies is normally with these issues, when it's leading to imbalances and perhaps negative patterns of behavior, is that 50% of the problem should I say 50% of the solution is understanding what the problem is in the first place. So self-awareness is crucial. And that's what it teaches you, because it makes you aware of your character traits.
Love that. So you've briefly said about the earth and the wood. Let's just briefly talk a little bit about the water, the fire, and the metal as well.
So water, let's say fire for a sec. So fire is controlled by water. Water controls fire. That is the basic kind of alchemy of all life, the fire water trajectory. So water controls fire because water can put fire out. So if you are a fiery person, and you tend to kind of be, often fiery people can be very gregarious. Okay, they love being around people. They like connecting. The energy of fire connects, but connecting can be quite tiring after a while. So often you find with fire people that they're constantly seeking the next up, because they like the feeling of connection. So it's like, that feeling, that's a fire connection, like this. And then the problem is, if it's not grounded correctly, that can be quite exhausting and can often lead to massive, great slumps. Often you find quite high profile celebrities are naturally fire types, because to be in the public eye, you often like receiving that level of attention. And often they end up in rehab because they can't handle it. It's too hot to handle. Okay. So what does that mean? Well, in order to create slightly more of a kind of steady eddy with the fire. So yes, the fire is always going to want that connection, but you bring the water element in to cool it down a little bit and to just root it just that little bit more. So that would be water fire. Metal, on the other hand, is controlled by fire, because fire can melt metal. So that's what it does. So metal often can become too rigid and too structured. Metal people are often people who are very good at being organized and tidy. They make very good accountants. My sister's a metal, and she's really good at finance, because she can't cope if there's even 2 pence off the balance sheet. She can't handle it. She's like, it's not perfect. Where's that 2 pence? Whereas I'd be just like, don't worry about it.
Yeah. It's so interesting, isn't it? So interesting. Yeah.
But often you can also find that metal people can be a little bit aloof and high-handed when it's too much of a good thing, because everything has to be perfect. So then if something isn't perfect, because we're not perfect, they can't handle it. And often they end up perhaps not making very many friends, because they just expect the benchmarks a bit high if it's a little bit imbalanced. Not a criticism, just an awareness that sometimes these metal people can be a bit, there's a draft. It's not quite right. I'm a bit cold. And non-metal people go, oh God, you're a bit hard work, because they don't realize. So if that could perhaps resonate a bit, where sometimes you feel that nothing is ever quite good enough, because that does come through, the fire warms it up a little bit and just softens it up a bit. And then you bring the fire element in. And then we just did, so then the last one is water. So water's great, actually, Danielle. Water's
so good. I'm glad.
Lovely.
I'm glad. Yeah.
Water sometimes the lower frequency of water is fear. And safety. So often if there's a dominance of water frequency in the chart, then often you find water people are a little bit reluctant to change, because they're a bit nervous about going, because they're fear driven. So is something going to happen? Is this safe? Is this going to be okay? Which means if, let's say you're married and you've been living in a tiny 1-bedroom flat, okay, and you're pregnant and you're about to have a baby, and you're literally going, okay, we really need to move because this flat is going to be too small. We're going to go bonkers in here with a baby. We can't even get the pram in the door. It's tiny. So you will often find that a water person will resist it to the point of which it's actually quite destructive, because you're thinking, we're bursting at the seams. This is actually creating a negative. We can't handle this. This baby's crying all night. So, and often you find that the water people will resist change. Now, what I always say to water people then is, if that's the case, and it will come in various gradients of that, often you will find, I'm giving you quite an extreme example, but you have to allow water to flow. so that it can slowly, if you think of the nature of water, water rivers will create teeny tiny little tributaries first to just go, oh, okay, let me just go over here. And then after a while, they start to get used to what they're doing. And then they go, oh, it's okay, because they're just flowing.
Yeah.
So that's Earth. Now, Earth ultimately is the landscape. So the landscape controls where the river's going to flow, because it depends on the topography of the land, is what happens to the water. If the land, because, for example, I live, near you in Somerset, and there's quite a lot of quarries around here. So consequently, once they've finished taking all the stone out of the quarry, which I'm not sure if I'm okay about that, but anyway, they do, they often fill them up. So the land, in this instance, has been plundered, but the water has now gone in because the land is keeping it as a reservoir. Now, often that's now making lots of lovely open water swimming and all sorts of interesting things. But the shape of the land has dictated what happens to the water. So you control water with the earth.
I love that. It's so interesting. And like you say, when you really step into that and really understand that. So, for example, for the last 10 years, my acupuncturist, would give me herbs because I'm very water element, or treat me in that way, or say these certain foods will work very well for you, or certain lifestyle. So actually, even though you were giving like extreme examples, for example, of water, if you're actually helping to ground yourself and balance yourself, and like you say, bringing in the earth elements a little bit more, you can actually live what I like to say your best self. So you can actually not only really understand who you are, but also nourish the parts of you that really need nourishing. And that's what I love so much about traditional Chinese medicine. Not only helps you really understand yourself, but you can then also almost think, okay, so what parts of me do I need to really sort of nourish and work on and help the energy flow a bit better? Or which parts of me do I need to actually just accept? And that's me, and really own that. And that's what I love so much. And something which I've never actually asked my acupuncturist, which I'm going to ask you. So if you are, for example, very water element, does that ever relate to the astrological chart? So, for example, I'm a Pisces. Would the fact that I'm water element, is there ever a correlation, or is there no correlation between traditional Chinese medicine and traditional astrology?
Okay, so brilliant, super interesting question. Now, and I'm going to slightly disappoint you with the answer because I'm not a Western astrologer. And I'll tell you why I'm not, because I've spent so many years studying Eastern astrology. It has taken over my life, as you well know.
Yeah.
The thought of now retraining in Western astrology as well, it's a bit like, oh my God. So I can only give you some sort of bare bones. So any Western astrologers listening, I apologize already, but let me give you what I do know, is that when you do Western astrology and you do birth charts, there are lots and lots of similarities. But the first thing to say is that when you're dealing with, say, you're a Pisces, that's the month.
Yeah.
Now, when we do Eastern astrology, the first hit that we go in on is the day.
Yes.
So it's different already.
Which I think is great, and actually much more specific. And I think we're Western. Sorry to interrupt you. I'll let you go back to it in a minute. But what I love about, if you are going to go into the Western astrology side of things, what I love about it is actually you need to go deeper. You then need to look what your moon sign is, your rising sign is, where your north node is. You need to look at all of these things and build that picture, because like you say, just saying I'm a Pisces actually doesn't tell us very much. Whereas Eastern astrology, I feel like it comes a little bit more specific quite quickly. So something that which is really interesting about Western astrology is, yes, you can look at the month you were born in. For example, you're a Pisces, but actually what you need to do is you need to go a little bit deeper into your chart and start to look where your moon sign is, where your rising sign is, where your north node is. All of that starts to build up a much bigger picture. So I see that there's so much value in Western astrology in that way, if you are looking at the whole chart. But what I love about Eastern astrology is I feel like straight away it gets way more specific. Like you say, it goes straight away to the day you were born.
I mean, I think they're both brilliant, to be honest with you. I mean, obviously, I've had my chart done loads of times by Western astrologers. I'm so interesting. And I think to be honest with you, it's a little bit like religion, if I may say, that it's a bit like Trivial Pursuits. There's many different cheeses to get to the middle point. And it's just really about your viewpoint, which is what's going to get you there. Ultimately, in my humble opinion, they take you to the truth. It's just which route you go down to get there. And in the old days, likely, if you were born in Europe, you were likely to be Christian. If you were born in China, you were likely to be Taoist. Okay, that's just how things were. But that's different now. We live in this amazing age of kind of cross-pollination of information, thanks to the internet. It's the internet, the information revolution we live in. So now we can open ourselves up and go, oh, that's interesting. And I know that in the next phase of my life, I will start cross-referencing this much more. But in the meantime, what's super interesting about Eastern astrological charts, which is called the Bazi. The Chinese chart is called Bazi. It means 8 characters. And it is literally like playing 10-card rummy, because you get 8 characters, so 8 cards, which are the 8 characters. That's the bar. And the bar is 8 and Z is characters. So you get 8 characters, which are like 8 cards you pick up to start with. And then you get a card per year, which is each Chinese New Year, because it shifts your hand. And then you get a card every 10 years, which shifts the hand again. So it is literally like playing cards. You suddenly pick up a joker and you go, oh, good, I can play that too now. So it's like that. And you get different phases of fortune within that, because the hand changes. Now, when that relates to your health, what that means is that it's not, whilst I've just given you the basics of the 5 elements, and that is how we all start. Mm-hmm. We start with the basics, okay? But when you want to become a little bit more sophisticated about it, what you will realize is that when you go to the very comprehensive reading, which is obviously what we do, it's slightly more complex than that, because your day master, which is where we start, which is like being a Pisces, okay? So let's say you're I don't know, I think you're a yin fire, for example. Okay, mm-hmm. What's that? Yin fire is, it's like moonlight. It's quiet leadership. Now, you're not quiet, but you're not Queen Boudicca going, come on, everyone. You're not like Jerry Halliwell. Okay.
Yeah. And in many ways, I think I am quite, I'm happy to speak and I'm confident and all of that. But yeah, I think as a person, I am quite a quiet person.
Yeah. I honestly, if I pulled your chart up, I just know I'm right. So, you've got...
That's hilarious. I won't tell my acupuncturist this.
Because what's likely to have happened if I looked at... And this is where the chart takes it to a whole new quantum. So when we start basics, it's, okay, you've got a lot of water. Mm-hmm. Okay, I can see it in your face. Mm-hmm. A water face, for example, has got lovely softness, which you've got like in the lovely rounds of the cheeks. You've got a softness to the energy frequency, but you've also got quite a lot of fire features in your face. You've got definition. Like my daughter is very watery, so her face is really soft. It's like a lily pond, but there's definition. Mm-hmm. There's angles to the face which give it the fire. Okay, so I would say, if I was to look at your chart, what's likely is that your day master is actually yin fire. Mm-hmm. Okay, your day master is yin fire, mm-hmm. but you've got a lot of water element in you, but it's likely to appear as a secondary thing. Mm-hmm. So that then starts to give us a bit more of a deeper in-depth about your personality, because it may well be that there is a lot of fire, but that the controlling element is a lot bigger. So it's going to overwhelm the fire, mm-hmm. and that then in turn causes the issue, which means when we then treat you at that very sophisticated level, we have what I call the unlock key, which comes in as an algorithm from the astrological chart. That means actually we may not treat you with water. We may actually have to treat you in a completely different way. And it brings a very sophisticated treatment program, which unfortunately hasn't yet completely permeated its way through into 5-element acupuncture. Why? Because the Bazi is so powerful, because this 5-element is pretty cool, that it was banned.
Oh, really?
Yes.
No way.
Okay, so as part of the whole, because the thing is, the history of China is unbelievably interesting. We can save that for another day. But in a very quick potted story, what happened was the classical Chinese medicine and classical Chinese culture and Taoism and the imperial palace and all of the, like the last emperor and all that kind of stuff. It's really ornate. Basically, they had, in Europe, we were having our revolutions in the sort of, the 1780 and all the rest of it. But in China, they kept that old guard for a little bit longer. And it all started to crumble about roughly this time 100 years ago. Okay, so then what happened was anything that was considered bourgeois or kind of up in terms of the kind of the old guard systems of doing things, a lot of it got shut down. It was actually illegal to practice Chinese medicine in China for quite a while. Believe it or not, no one knows this. It's bonkers. Until Chairman Mao basically reinstated it and said, hang on a minute, it's a national treasure. Thank you very much. We're going to bring this back. But by that point, the Cultural Revolution had now taken place and it was now politicized. And there's nothing, I'm not making a judgment as to whether that was right, wrong, bad. It's just what happened. And it's fine, because Chinese medicine is so unbelievably powerful that even then it still works, because it's so good even with TCM, it works brilliantly well on so many things. But the bit that they chucked out was all the spirituality,
Right.
all the uniqueness of the self. It all became very standardized, okay, because they were looking at the Western medicine, and they were dealing with the fact that they had huge, great health crises going on in China, like waves of illnesses going on, messing up millions of people. And they were trying to draw the country into this new way of thinking. So they created a medicine system that worked for that. But what's now happened is we've all evolved out of that now in China as well. So it's now been reinstated. And the Chinese government are now investing billions of dollars back in their own health system, reinstating things that have been abolished 100 years ago for political reasons, and now it's come back. So the issue with the Bazi is because of this kind of gap, no one knew anything about it. And in fact, I was actively told at university when I was studying 5 elements that like, can I stop badgering them about why were we only done on color, sound, odor, and emotion, which is how we diagnose.
Okay, interesting.
It's so interesting because the reality is I kept sitting there thinking, I'm sorry, but my understanding of Chinese culture is it's not that ambiguous. There's too much ambiguity in that system. And if you really want the in-depth, you go to the chart, and the chart tells you, and then the chart unlocks you, and that's what we do. But that's a super sophisticated diagnostic tool, which most people don't need to worry about. The ABC of that degree I've just given you is look at the fact sheets, have a little look, go, oh my God, I'm just like that. And start with that, because already you're going to, just knowing that you're very watery, you've got a lot of water in your chart, is already going to help you a huge amount navigating your health and the future of your life.
Definitely, I agree. I feel like this is so interesting. I feel like we're going to keep this as the subject of the episode, right, rather than try and go on to too much other stuff. So what I'd love to just ask you is tell us a little bit more about your Bazi readings, because I know that this is something you're hugely passionate about. Like you say, you're passionate about it even at university and trying to get into this even more. But I know that it's something which you do a lot now. I mean, you do it every week with a lot of people. So if you went back to basics of just explaining what a Bazi reading is, could you just sort of describe that for us?
Absolutely. I mean, it is kind of, I guess, I mean, I'm sort of known as, funny enough, you picked on the two things I've known. The very first session we ever had was gua sha, of course, because you're a doctor. So I was often called, that gua sha woman.
Yeah.
Oh, you're that gua sha woman. Okay.
Yeah.
And now I've been dubbed healer to the stars off the Bazi, which is what ended up below roughly this time last year. So the Bazi, basically, as I've said, it's the 8 characters, and I've explained kind of how that works. And it is a very intricate and yet fascinating diagnostic tool that we use, which literally unlocks everything. Everything. Your soul purpose. If you believe in reincarnations, which you may or may not, it's an individual decision. So if you do, past lives, future lives. If you don't, it comes in via the blood anyway. So you can believe the energy frequency. But if you don't want to believe that bit because it's too ambiguous, we inherit bloodlines and we inherit lessons from our ancestors because it comes through the DNA strands. It comes through blood. It will read that. It will read, it has the ability to diagnose any existing health issues, and it will answer the question, why? Why do I have what I have? It will also prevent, because you understand what the imbalance is, it will stop you getting sick, because that's the healthcare model that we are moving to the 21st century. We are no longer sitting here, well, some people are, but our audience is not. We're not sitting here waiting to get sick and letting the Western doctors, no disrespect because they're amazing, them to fix it. Because our parents' generation was, they will fix it. We just do what we like and they will fix it. And they did. I mean, Western medicine's brilliant. I'm alive because, but what we're learning in the 21st century is it doesn't sort out everything. It doesn't. It's brilliant at what it does, but it doesn't do everything, because if it did, everybody would be happy and healthy, and they're not. So clearly there's a problem. And the other thing is we have the privilege of free healthcare in this country, and we really do, but we are all fully aware that it is under a lot of pressure. And I think just giving everyone a round of applause every now and then I think we need to do a bit more. So taking matters into our own hands, like we do with our teeth, and brushing our teeth every day, and using self-care practices that you and I both teach to ensure that you are trying as best you can to keep yourself as healthy as possible, and then going to the doctor when there's a problem, is a much better system for the NHS. So that if you could start to shave off, say, 20% of the people that are using it, that would make a massive difference to the life of our healthcare workers, who frankly are working like total heroes every single day of the week.
Absolutely.
It's incredible. So it's important for us all to take ownership of our bodies and of our purpose. And when you look at the health of an individual, it comes in 3 different levels. It's like, I call it the pyramid of health. So literally imagine a pyramid. So the bottom is your physical health, the middle is your emotional health, and the top is your purpose. And to be truly healthy, you need all 3. Now, often what happens is our physical health breaks down and the pain of our physical symptoms block everything else, because the pain receptors just block. And then we're so busy dealing with the pain and the symptoms that we're not really thinking about other things, because that's taken over. Now, if we can deal with the bottom symptom of health, then often you will find, which is what's happening now in society, because in the 20th century, pain and the basic level of physical health was mainly the problem. Western medicine sorted a lot of that out now. So now what's happened is many people have emotional issues, which is mental health, which in Chinese medicine, mental health is actually ruled by the body rather than the mind. But it's the lighter energy frequency. So rather than a physical symptom, let's go, my elbow hurts, okay? It's my emotions hurt. I don't feel emotionally content. I don't have equanimity. I feel sad. I feel anxious. I feel worried. So that's the middle band. And then once we've started to address that, the final missing link, which is what most people are now coming to in my community, is what is the meaning of all of this? What's the point? Now, the Bazi will answer all of the above. Right. It's so amazing. That's why they banned it. It's really powerful stuff.
Yeah, because it gives us back our own power, and they banned it because they didn't want people to do that, which is so interesting.
And not just them, let's just hook that back round, because it's often quite a sort of post-colonial kind of capitalism versus communism kind of structure, which is, if you say watch the Truman Show, for example, you can see quite clearly that in the Western construct of capitalism, which is the origin of our society, is just as controlling. And, we burn all the witches. So, the witch hunt took that, and that happened, 400 years ago. You should know. Okay, anyone listening as well. But basically, we disbanded all of this wisdom 400 years ago in order to control. And there's a lot of really interesting historical research proving that the kind of the rise of the capitalist construct in medieval Europe and all the way through to sort of the 17th century, when the empire started building, and then we took it all over the world, we got rid of all of the female wisdom keepers to create fear and control through ignorance, so that capitalism could start to flourish, because it did, and the masculine narrative that went with it. Now, I'm not against men at all. I'm just talking about the masculine construct, where women like us who sit there with the wisdom, we're like, you are a persona non grata, so we're going to get rid of you. So it's just all that happened in China was the very same wisdom that was expressed in a slightly different way, which takes us back to, the Trivial Pursuits concept, that they're there and we're here, but actually it all goes to the same thing. They just deconstructed it 100 years ago. And the excitement about all this, Danielle, is that as a result of doing so, we can piece it back together. Yeah. Because it's still there. And that came from me being, I don't know whether they loved me or hated me at university. I don't think they quite know what to do with me. I was the girl that kept saying why, because I was literally, but why? And then, oh my, as a parent, you go, oh my God.
You were that kid as well, weren't you? I could just imagine your poor parents.
Why? No one can answer these questions, and now they can, because I found it.
Yes, you found the answers yourself.
It's the Bazi, and it's,
oh my gosh,
it's brilliant Bazi, Danielle, and it is so fascinating.
I need to do this with you. I can't believe I haven't done a reading with you.
Well, I was just thinking, I will do a reading with you.
I'd love it.
We should do one live. We should do it as a
let's do it as a live. Yeah,
because I did one on King Charles on the day of the coronation, and honestly, everyone was crying their eyes out. It was so interesting. I'm allowed to say this because it's in space. He's a yin water.
Okay.
So yin waters are very sensitive. Very sensitive. It's like dew on the grass. Vast amounts of yin waters, like 60% yin water, which means poor guy. Oh my God.
I mean, that's a big job for someone that's in water, and he didn't choose that job either.
Well,
did he? Or did he? Do you know, I was just going to say that. Or did he? Yeah, love it.
Or who did? Or
yes.
Then when you start to go deep, kind of the quantum aspect of and this is again why it was banned, ladies and gentlemen, because it's powerful stuff. So the minute you start looking at this, you are without. It's like a scratch card. Once you've gone, you're yin fire. Okay, right. Okay, what does that mean right now? Then when we go to the meaning of life, it's like, then it turns into the blueprint of the soul. She says with bumps all over. blueprint of the soul. And this is all about why you're here and your spiritual purpose, and above all, your spiritual evolution. And that, in my opinion, is incredible when we're dealing with this amazing age of consciousness that we are living in history right now.
Yeah.
I say to my
It's amazing.
it's amazing.
It's amazing.
Yeah,
we're so lucky to be here in this moment, but we're here for a reason in this moment. We chose it.
Yeah, exactly, we did.
Yeah.
And we especially you don't have to be a woman to have it, because King Charles is a man, but he's got a huge amount of divine feminine frequency inside him. So he's a man. Of course he's a man, but he's got a lot of feminine energy. So it's not about being a man or a woman, and it's like, if you wish to get involved in the divine feminine, which is right now the rise and the rise and the rise of the divine feminine, and we are living in history right now. So it's this incredible opportunity to nourish that feminine energy frequency and live as a pioneer. So that if you do believe in reincarnation, and if you don't, that's fine. Just think of your children, or if you don't have them, other people's children, or just the future of humanity, just wanting this world to exist, that we have this amazing opportunity right now. It's slightly do or die. And I believe that we are in this incredible moment in history where in 100 years' time, if you believe in reincarnation, you'll be looking back. We won't remember any of this because we'll be, from the water samsara, blah, blah, blah. We won't remember. But you'll look back at it in history and go, so there was this group of amazing people and they all stepped into their power and look what they did. And as all the great masters say, one person in their flow is the equivalent to 1 million people who are not. So if you are fully awakened, you can change the world. Now that's quite exciting, because all of a sudden this power that you were talking about was stamped out in the witch hunt and then stamped out in the Cultural Revolution, and is now coming back because thank God the Chinese have restated it. Thank you. So now we can all practice it and talk about it freely. Is we have this amazing opportunity. If you do a bit of simple maths, 9 billion people in the world, 1 person per million. You only need 9,000 people. Nothing. You and I've got that. I've got people that comment that much on one post. Right. You more. So, because I saw your post where you got what, is it 1 million or 2 million, or I don't know?
Yeah, across all my social media, 1 million now. Yeah.
Right. So if you think, well, if you've got 1 million people, it's not going to take more. Anyone listening, if you'd like to volunteer to get fully in your flow, sign up to get in your flow. You don't have to do anything. You just have to be conscious. You are able to energetically transform the energy frequency of 1 million people who are basically asleep and controlled by fear. Just watch the Truman Show, ladies and gentlemen. That will tell you what you need to see, because it's right there in that film. And it's so interesting. And only 9,000 people. You think, well, that's not difficult.
Yeah, it's nothing.
No, so we can do it, which is exciting.
We can do it. Oh, I love that. What a perfect place to finish. Katie, if people would like to come and have one of your Bazi readings, how can they do that with you?
It's, oh gosh, that's very kind. It's all on the website. So the best thing to do is look at the website and you can just book in there. But perhaps it's, because it is very much the kind of Rolls Royce of what I do. So, I orbit between that woman that does gua sha and all the meaning of life, which is what we've just discussed, which went totally off brief, but who cares?
No, who cares? It's amazing. It's the best episode. I love it.
Well, so what I always say to people, if you're new to this content, it's quite a stretch to go, right, now have 2 hours with me. So, just follow the socials, get involved, listen to the free stuff, look at the free fact sheets, listen to the content that we've produced together, and just start orbiting around it. And then allow yourself, allow the awareness of that to come in and to go, actually, that's interesting. But in summary, it answers 2 key questions: why and what, which is, why have I got what I've got? Why am I feeling like this? And therefore, what do I do about it?
Yes.
And that's what you get.
That's amazing. Katie, thank you so much. It's been a fascinating episode, and I'm sure that everyone's going to follow you on Katie Brindle on Instagram. I'm trying to think of your Instagram, and Hayo'u Method. Are they the 2 Instagrams?
Yes, and then it's it's finally on TikTok.
Great.
I'm not very good at it.
So Hayo'u Method on there as well.
Yes, Hayo'u and Katie Brindle, they're both on TikTok. Still
perfect.
I do find these social media platforms, it's a bit like the big shops in London. If you're a Selfridges girl and you wander off to, I don't know, Harvey Knits or somewhere else, you're a bit lost. You go, I don't know where I'm going, and it feels a bit weird. But you get the hang of it eventually.
You get the hang of it in time, exactly. Soon you become a Harvey Knits girl as well. So
exactly like you. You're everything.
Katie, thank you so much. Absolute pleasure chatting to you.
Thank you for having me on.